Chen Weihua, what about the relationship with with China? China featured very strongly in the election campaigns, actually, from the Donald Trump side. He accused China of being a currency manipulator, of stealing American jobs. But now that he's been elected, well, firstly, how was the election seen in China?
Well, I think, in the U.S. and the rest of the world, it was a kind of a shock, puzzling, because every news report before that suggested that Hillary is going to win. So obviously it's not. But social media, is kind of going viral. My WeChat moments, I see last night, 70% are about the election. So people, there was people talk about actually the two friends, in the U.S., Chinese American, one Trump supporter, one Hillary supporter, finally broke up. It's because of the election and all these things. People care a lot. The Chinese media.
Right, there are major issues between the United States and China, trade and economic issues, of course, issues over the South China Sea, the American pivot to Asia. Where do you see that going? Do you see continuity or do you see major changes?
Well, like the previous panelists say, I think, we should not now pay too much attention to what they said at the campaign trail. Currency manipulation, tariffs. Actually, Trump had not talked about tariffs for quite a while, actually. So past president candidates talked crazy things about China, too. But when they were elected, they did just the opposite sometimes. So now let's pay attention to what Trump actually said starting last night. His victory speech last night was quite actually good to me. He talked about seeking common ground and not hostility, partnership, not conflict.
Right.
This is exactly what President Xi actually sent a congratulatory message. After the election, talking about mutual respect, win-win game, cooperation, no conflict, no confrontation. So I think the Chinese, obviously, both sides agree there was so many common interests. We want a stable relationship. It serves the both country and the world. But at the same time, we have problems, like you mentioned, South China Sea. And they know what's going to happen. The good things, if Hillary is president, and what will be the problem? Because she was the champion of this pivot to Asia, and that problem might get more serious or worse. Under President Clinton, if possible. But Trump has expressed before his willingness to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, improve relation with Russia. So this is sounds very less interventionist message. I think is appealing to the Chinese. They're not quite sure. Let's see who will be his Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, his major foreign policy team. But people do see some kind of a hope. It's not sure. Yeah.
Lenny, something that we've heard over the past 12 to 15 hours since we knew that Donald Trump was going to be the president is that people, his supporters, they want change. They want to change. That's why they voted for him. What are the changes that they want?
Well, some of those changes are just sort of vaguely defined. They like the fact that he stuck his thumb in the eye of the establishment and the status quo, and he sort of said we have to drain the swamp in Washington. When he got down to policy, and he wasn't always that specific, but the things that he did say dealt with immigration, they dealt with trade. To some extent, they dealt with the economy, though his call for infrastructure development was no different from what Hillary Clinton was talking about. He's going to go for lower taxes. So these are things that he ran on, and these are the types of changes that he's going to probably put forth. The question for Donald Trump is, what if he doesn't build this wall, which was sort of the signature sort of promise of his campaign that roused all of the troops and all of the voters and everything? Will that work against him? Or is Donald Trump the type of person who's such a deal maker, such a problem solver, who likes to get things done, that he will be able to finesse not being held to some of these promises to be able to accomplish the goals as long as they make the people who voted for him feel happy and feel like he's doing something for them.
All right. Peter, I want to get back to the U.S. relationship with Russia. You've written about this. Russia also played a big role in this election. There were accusations that Russia had interfered in the election, that it had hacked Democratic Party computers, that Russia was behind WikiLeaks. Putin was called a thug more than once. Have we seen any evidence that Russia was involved in this? Actual solid rock, evidence?
No, I don't think so. I was greatly dismayed by the tone of much of the accusations against Russia, Hillary Clinton seemed committed to starting both a new Cold War and a new Red Scare here in the United States. It was absolutely outstandingly amazing for her to call a major presidential candidate a puppet of the Russian government on a public stage during a public debate. I think that we're going to see with Donald Trump a certain pragmatism in foreign policy, hopefully not sidelined by too many events happening too quickly. He's made those signals about Syria, working together with the Russians to some sort of resolution there. He's made those signals about Europe, working together for some sort of resolution there. And if he continues to go forward with these kinds of plans to stop picking fights, not only in Europe, not only in Syria, perhaps not in the South China Sea, then there exists the potential of an era of pragmatism in American politics that we really haven't seen for quite some time. Remember, 8 years of George Bush set the world on fire. Yeah. Hillary Clinton had made it clear that she intended more violence across the Middle East, a much more aggressive stance in the Pacific. So we are keeping our fingers crossed for some pragmatism that will allow the United States and the rest of the world to start recovering from the wounds of the last, well, 16 years.
You know, I just think it's a little bit unfair to suggest that she's picking fights. She's not the one who invaded Crimea. She's not the one who's been supporting Assad. So we have to be careful about sort of imposing sort of ideology or political preference on what people are saying. You know, let's face it, you know, there are a lot of issues with Russia and the Europeans and with the United States. We can't wish that away. Donald Trump is going to have to deal with some of that. You might feel that she was too aggressive, but once again, she wasn't the one who put troops into Ukraine.
Yeah, I want to get back to
but
this.
She did, but excuse me, may I respond to that? But she did help put troops into Iraq. She is calling for more aggressive American military action in Syria. She is the one who helped lead the Western incursions into Libya, which turned that place into a failed state. She is supportive of a range of American actions. And so we don't like to use the word in America, invade. We like to call it something else. But in fact, that's exactly what, as Secretary of State Hillary Clinton did. And when she's talking about more troops into Syria, a no-fly zone, more of these types of things, you can't really say that what she's talking about and what Putin are doing are somehow so radically different as to say that we're wishing problems away. I think you need to look at the actions, not the words.
Right. I'd like to get Alexander's view on this. Alexander, you're the Russian. You've seen these accusations made against Russia and President Putin. Why do you think Russia was targeted during the election?
Well, as I said already, I think it was a disastrous campaign by Hillary Clinton. I think she was receiving absolutely terrible advice. And I think so many things were misjudged by her campaign. And I find it quite remarkable that everybody is saying now that they were astonished by Trump winning. I think it was pretty obvious that he was winning when Barack Obama did the unthinkable and started campaigning for him, for Hillary Clinton, on a daily basis. He was sounding desperate. And that already was showing that the Democrats were losing the battle. So that's one point. And as regards Russia and what Trump can do with Russia, the previous administration boxed itself into a permanent conflict with Russia by interfering in Ukraine. I find it completely irresponsible of people to say that Putin moved his troops into Ukraine when the same Western nations, including the US, have organized the coup in Kyiv that overthrew a legitimate regime. You do not do these things in the 21st century and then start to scream that you are being attacked.
Right.
This is absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I don't want to get bogged down in that right now. I want to move on with the election. Chen Weihua, the Obama administration, of course, pivoted to Asia. Part of that was also known as rebalancing, sending more of its military assets into the Pacific. We also had a dispute between China and the Philippines, which went to arbitration. The United States backed the Philippines in that. Do you think any of that is going to change under a Trump administration?
Well, I think it's already changed. I mean, regardless who actually now you see the China-Philippine relations has improved dramatically. Right. I mean, recently under President Duterte, I mean, was more willing to talk to China. I mean, not really using this arbitration, you know, as a precondition, whatever. I mean, so I think, you know, if the U.S. does not, I mean, my view is does not matter in the region. So much. I mean, actually, they will be, I mean, China, Philippines, I mean, China, ASEAN will be able to handle it more effectively. I mean, because of the U.S. Deep involvement, I mean, during the Obama administration, I mean, during Hillary's, I mean, Secretary of State years, I mean, it's like you push China, I mean, to make sort of sometimes more strong reactions, you know. So that kind of action-reaction should be reviewed, actually, by the President Trump administration. So how to approach the issue more sort of Asian style. You have to be sensitive to how the Asians solve their issues. I mean, China successfully solved border disputes with 14 countries, a neighbor country, I mean, all through bilateral negotiations. So had a great track record in that. So you have to have some confidence.
Right. Lenny, President Trump, when he becomes president, is not going to bring some great tradition of statecraft to negotiations with the Chinese or the Russians or with anyone else. So what is his style going to be? Is he going to deal with this like a businessman, or as he says, I'm going to make deals with other countries?
Well, I think that's exactly it. He likes to read people. Yeah. He likes to see how he can work with them, figure out how to cut deals, figure out how to sort of get things done that he wants to get things done, you know, the way he wants them done. So I think that's really going to be his style. It may be a very personal style. The buck will stop with him, irrespective of what, let's say, his national security advisor or secretary of state might do. He's going to be the closer on a lot of these deals because that's what he prides himself on.
We've been hearing, Lenny, that the country is very divided. Is Trump going to bring this country together, unify the country?
Well, a lot's going to depend on what he does. Some of the rhetoric during the campaign, targeting Mexican Americans, targeting people of the Islamic faith, making fun of people who are disabled, sort of making fun of women and objectifying women. It's going to be hard to overcome some of that. So a lot will depend on the rhetoric he uses, the appointments he has, the policy he puts forth. And I think really if he wants to be able to bind the wounds of this country, he's going to have to reach out and speak to all of the people. So the question is whether this deal maker Donald Trump will be able to go to all of these constituencies, hear them out, and try to find some common ground. And I think that's the one hope that some people have right now, that if he's going to be able to do it at all, that's how he's going to do it.
Peter, one other foreign policy issue, and this was talked about during the campaigns, and that is the Iran nuclear deal. Donald Trump said that that was one of the worst deals that the United States had ever signed, and that he will tear it up if he becomes president. Do you think he will tear it up?
He's going to be under extraordinary pressure to do something like that from his right. He has spoken out against the deal. He has criticized Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama for their role in this, and it's going to be very difficult for him to walk away from that. What we can hope is he understands that he needs to deal with Iran in a number of pragmatic ways. He's got a situation in Yemen that demands some form of resolution. He's going to need Iran to work with him if he's going to bring Syria to some form of resolution. He's going to be watching the situation in Saudi Arabia very closely for fears of some kind of weakening in the royal family. So my hope would be that someone would get to him early, explain the range of issues between the United States and Iran, and explain to him that the accord is only one small part of a very complex relationship, and appeal to that businessman side of him that you can't throw one thing away and expect the other parts of the relationship not to suffer. That said, if he takes it on as an early challenge, it will not go successfully, and it will provoke friction in the Gulf where no more friction is really needed.
Okay. Alexander, I've only got 30 seconds for a very important question. Are we going to see more cooperation between the United States and Russia on resolving the crisis in Syria?
Well, everybody is hoping for that, but I find it strange that we all assume that Trump is going to jump into this international affairs into foreign policy. I think he'd rather concentrate on the domestic policy initially, because that's what the voters expect from him. I think every American, always thinks that the most important things are happening in America, not outside it. And also, I'd like to stress that he is a showman. He is a presenter of one of the most famous programs on television in America. America lives by television. It breathes by television. So he will create any illusion he wants, and he will control the masses.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks to all of you for joining us. That's it for this edition of The Heat.